In an unprecedented judicial maneuver that has drawn considerable international attention, the US Supreme Court has intervened in a deeply controversial immigration case involving the Trump administration agent. The case centers on an individual who, despite a direct judicial order preventing removal to El Salvador, was nonetheless sent there by federal officials. This report meticulously examines the unfolding events, the legal intricacies involved, and the broader implications for constitutional rights and the balance of powers in the United States. At the heart of this case is the clear violation of an immigration judge's directive. The individual in question had been explicitly ordered not to be returned to El Salvador, a decision intended to protect his rights and secure due process. Despite this, federal officials proceeded with his removal, a move that has been sharply criticised as a blatant disregard for judicial authority. Notably, a strict deadline was imposed for today, April 7th at 11:59 p.m., by which the government was required to correct its action and return the individual. The subsequent filing of a lawsuit forced federal courts to contend with the consequences of this removal and to enforce the underlying order. In response to this challenge, the US Supreme Court was quickly drawn into the dispute. Facing an appeal from the federal government, the Supreme Court, under the direction of Chief Justice Roberts, issued an administrative stay that temporarily prevents the mandated return of the individual. This decision effectively suspends the midnight deadline until the court has had sufficient time to review the detailed briefs submitted by both parties. Chief Justice Roberts' action was not an endorsement of either side's arguments, but rather a procedural step designed to ensure that the legal issues at hand are examined with due diligence. In doing so, the court has signalled that a comprehensive review of the federal government's motion is necessary before any irreversible actions occur. The situation epitomizes the long-standing tension between the executive branch and judicial oversight, particularly in areas as sensitive as immigration policy. And the Trump administration's approach, according to its representatives, characterizes the removal as an administrative error, a claim that minimizes the severity of the misstep. Critics, however, argue that no error in handling paperwork or bureaucratic misplacement can justify the forced removal of a human being to a foreign country, especially when there is clear evidence that a judicial order was in place. This dispute sharply questions whether any government agency can unilaterally disregard a court order simply to expedite its own operational procedures, thereby undermining the fundamentals of due process. The broader political ramifications of this case are equally significant. Legal experts and commentators have expressed deep concern over the potential normalization of executive overreach. Many assert that if the Supreme Court ultimately sides with the administration, it may inadvertently embolden future actions that sidestep established judicial mandates. Some voices within the legal community fear that such a ruling could set a dangerous precedent, one in which the protection afforded by judicial orders is weakened, and the executive branch is granted unchecked discretion over immigration matters. Discretion over immigration matters. The optics of such a decision are troubling. An administration that has publicly conceded that the individual's presence in the United States was marred by an administrative error now finds itself at the center of a constitutional crisis. Moreover, the decision to issue a temporary stay does little to alleviate these concerns. While it does provide a necessary pause to allow for a more measured examination of the case, it also serves as a reminder that the judicial review process can be influenced by internal divisions among the justices. Chief Justice Roberts' unilateral decision to grant the stay without clear input from his colleagues raises questions about whether the justices are fully aligned on their approach to executive overreach. Some speculate that certain justices may view the preservation of executive power as paramount, particularly in an era where the boundaries of presidential authority are being relentlessly tested. The administration's argument rests on the notion that the error was purely administrative, a miscommunication or misplacement of paperwork rather than an intentional defiance of judicial orders. However, when the error in question involves the relocation of an individual to a detention facility in another country, the minimization of such a breach becomes increasingly indefensible. Critics maintain that this is not merely a trivial clerical oversight. It is an egregious violation of the protections that undergird the American legal system. After all, an immigration judge's decision is not a suggestion, but a binding directive. One that is essential to ensuring fair and lawful treatment for all individuals within the country's borders. This debate intensifies when one considers the due process rights of non-citizens residing in the United States. Regardless of citizenship status, every person present in the country is entitled to fundamental protections under the Constitution. Wow. The removal of this individual, a person who was already being afforded due process as evidenced by the protective court order, casts a long shadow over the integrity of those protections. It challenges the very notion that judicial orders must be adhered to, particularly when they are designed to safeguard the rights of vulnerable populations. Should the Supreme Court decide in favor of the administration, it would effectively signal that the detailed and painstaking efforts of the judiciary to protect constitutional rights can be circumvented by the executive branch when it suits its administrative agenda. Amid this legal and political tug-of-war, the role of the Department of Justice has also come under intense scrutiny. In court, DOJ attorneys found themselves in a precarious position when they acknowledged the error made by the administration. This candid admission, while hailed by many as a demonstration of honesty and accountability, quickly led to significant professional repercussions. The attorneys in question were subsequently removed from their positions within the DOJ. This action has sparked a broader debate about the expectations placed on government lawyers. Should they risk their careers by highlighting instances where their department deviates from legal norms? Or should they conform to a policy of silence to preserve their positions? The answer to this question has far-reaching implications for the ethical standards of government, legal practice, and the overall integrity of the justice system. The controversy extends beyond the particulars of this single case to touch on a broader struggle for the preservation of constitutional governance. So, when a judicial order is openly violated, regardless of whether it is by direct intent or an alleged administrative oversight, the consequences can ripple across the legal and political landscape. The potential for future abuses increases when there is an impression that the executive branch can dismiss judicial mandates without facing substantive consequences. Such a scenario not only undermines the rule of law, but also erodes public confidence in a system that is meant to balance disparate powers while protecting individual rights. Supporters of judicial integrity are urging the public to remain vigilant in their demand for accountability. In response to these events, initiatives like Democracy Docket, a new platform established by Mark and his team, have emerged as vital avenues for monitoring and challenging governmental actions that threaten electoral and constitutional safeguards. Democracy Docket stands as a bulwark against the erosion of legal norms, championing transparency and adherence to the rule of law at a time when these values are increasingly under attack. The call to action is clear. Abiding every branch of government to the highest standards, can we ensure that the rights of individuals are not sacrificed on the altar of expediency or political expedience? So, in drawing this investigation to a close, it is imperative to appreciate the gravity of what is at stake. The Supreme Court's decision in this case is not merely a legal technicality. It is a test of whether the judiciary can uphold constitutional protections even when confronted with the persuasive pressures of executive authority. The situation serves as a crucial reminder that the balance between the branches of government is delicate, and that even minor deviations from established procedure can have far-reaching consequences. If the court ultimately sides with the Trump administration, it would represent a turning point where the enforcement of judicial orders is subordinated to the expediencies of executive action, thereby undermining the foundational principles of due process. The unfolding legal drama has, in essence, exposed a rift within the American governance system. On one side, there is a firm belief in the inviolability of judicial mandates, a belief that no administrative error can justify the removal of a person in defiance of a court order. On the other side, there is an insistence that executive discretion and the management of immigration policy must be protected, even if it means bending the strictures of legal protocol in rare instances. This battle of principles transcends the particulars of the current case. It challenges the integrity of the constitutional order as a whole. As the briefing process draws to a close with expectations of a rapid resolution by the Supreme Court, legal observers remain acutely aware of the potential implications. The outcome will not only determine the fate of one individual, but will also signal how future disputes between the judiciary and the executive branch might be adjudicated. It is a decision that will undoubtedly resonate far beyond the confines of this single case, influencing both national policy and the public's faith in the justice system. In conclusion, the case before the Supreme Court is emblematic of a much larger struggle, a struggle to maintain the balance between executive power and judicial oversight, and ultimately to safeguard the constitutional rights of every person in the United States. The removal of an individual against a clear judicial order, cloaked as a mere administrative error, lays bare the vulnerabilities of a system where even the most fundamental legal protections are at risk. For those committed to the ideals of transparency, accountability, and due process, the work of advocating for these principles remains more critical than ever. It is incumbent upon all who cherish the rule of law to stay informed, to hold government actions to strict scrutiny, and to support platforms like Democracy Docket that tirelessly strive to preserve the integrity of America's judicial processes. This report underscores the urgency of defending our constitutional rights and ensuring that no branch of government can operate with impunity. It is a call to action for citizens to remain vigilant, to demand accountability from those in power, and to engage actively in the pursuit of justice. The integrity of our legal system, and by extension, the future of our democratic society, depends upon a resolute commitment to upholding the principles enshrined in the Constitution. As debates continue and the Supreme Court prepares to render its decision, it is incumbent upon each of us to reflect on the importance of these proceedings and to stand steadfast in support of a system that values every human life and every legal safeguard.